Welcome back to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba, your host. Thanks for joining us. To our audience in the United States and around the world. All right, Mance Harmon, co-founder and CEO Swirlds, SWIRLDS.com, is on the show with us right now. Mance, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. I was just doing as much homework as I could on what you're doing, what Hashgraph is, how it works, and as far as I can tell, this is you're leading the charge. I mean, you're the next Google, Microsoft, all rolled into one. Can give us a little background on you first, then tell us about Swirlds, and let's drill right into Hashgraph. That's just the next gen. That's a revolutionary concept you came up with to fix a lot of problems.
Well, thank you so much. So, yeah, actually, there are two of us. My co-founder, Lehman Baird, who is the inventor of Hashgraph, the technology that makes all of this possible. Mm-hmm. He and I have been working together for 25 years. We started our career in the military, the Air Force. We'd done research in machine learning in the lab. We taught computer science at the academy, managed a massive software program for the Missile Defense Agency, and we're entrepreneurs. This is our third company. We've started two prior companies in the space of identity and sold those to Fortune 500 and private equity. And Lehman invented this technology, the Hashgraph, that really solves all of the problems that we've all identified related to blockchain, which is the technology that enabled Bitcoin. And we're now taking it to market and commercializing the Hashgraph. That's correct.
All right. Tell everybody what it does, though.
So the best way to think about distributed ledger technology is sort of by analogy using databases. Historically, a single company will run all the copies of a database, like Facebook has its set of databases, and Google has its set of databases. But these companies would never think of letting their competitors or each other run instances of the database. That never occurred to them. What distributed ledger technology does is it makes it possible for different legal entities, different companies, different people to all run an instance or a copy of a database, and all of those databases stay in sync and do so securely without the ability for any of these individuals to change the contents of the database or otherwise damage the parties that are involved. That's what's revolutionary about this whole distributed ledger technology movement that started back in 2008. The problem with it has been that the first generation was just extremely slow. Think of a global database that is Bitcoin, and the application running on this top of this database is the cryptocurrency application. Well, globally, it's only able to process about 5 transactions per second, which is terrible, and it's extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. If I want to use Bitcoin, it's going to cost me $20 approximately per transaction, which is just too expensive. But it demonstrated the value of this technology. What Hashgraph does is it resolves those problems. It makes it possible to have a global network that's not processing 5 transactions per second, but rather hundreds of thousands of transactions per second, and at almost zero cost. It's really the difference between a calculator and a computer. And when you have that kind of generational leap in terms of technology, then what's possible to achieve with it is just fundamentally different. It just broadens the range of applications that can be built on type of this technology way beyond what anybody could have imagined with blockchain.
Now, let me jump in there and ask a couple of questions on this, because from what I've been able to discern, you're not in a position of having a leader that can monopolize the transactions as in pay to play being first or second. But you're actually being able to spread that around. And walk us through that part right there, because that was very impressive. That's the first thing everybody tries to do is monopolize it. And if you can't with this, then it truly is a disruptive system.
Right. Well, so the question is, can you ensure that no single party has undue influence
Right.
over the order of transactions? And another good analogy is maybe a stock market where you have a matching platform, you have bids and asks flowing into the market, and if it's a distributed market, with leader-based systems, there's an individual that is taking those bids and putting them into an order and, dictating the order of those bids for the entire market, all the participants. Well, that's too much power in the hands of one party. That party could be bribed to unfair advantage.
Exactly.
What we've been able to do is build a distributed ledger technology where there is no leader ever, and the order of the transactions as they're actually received by the network is maintained provably, and that's unique in the industry. So, not only do we resolve the performance problems and the cost problems, we provide a fairness property that's important not just for stock markets but auctions. Who's the first person to push the buy button? Or games. If we have multiple players in a game, each bending over to pick up a pot of gold, well, who pushed the button first? There's so many different areas where fairness matters. And with Hashgraph, we've enabled that fairness property uniquely in the industry.
Well, you brought up a very good case, and there's multiple applications on what you just said. Do you see the financial community starting to adopt Hashgraph in their processes? Because it's very manipulative, and the public thinks it's manipulative.
Well, I think there are a lot of financial use cases that will benefit from this. One of the killer apps really has not yet been enabled, and that is micropayments. The ability to pay a fraction of a cent to somebody enables entirely new business models. If it's the case that you have to pay $20 per transaction, like we currently do with Bitcoin,
right,
then obviously it doesn't make sense to pay a fraction of a penny with a transaction fee of $20. If we can eliminate those transaction fees or make them almost zero, then we have something really interesting, because micropayments makes it possible to begin to provide business models that help eliminate the way the internet works today. I mean, if we look at Facebook and Google, surveillance capitalism, that's what I call it, where we have these tech giants who are collecting information and then selling it. We are the product, right? They're selling that information to advertisers. Well, that's their business model, but if it becomes possible to pay fractions of a penny for the services that we care about, all of a sudden that introduces a new business model that can be used to help replace the old models. Another place where this would be really interesting is...
Mance, I need you to hold on to that second topic you were going to bring up. Let's take a break, and I'm going to come back, start there, and then go into security on the other side, all right?
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll be right back with Mance Harmon. He is the CEO and co-founder with Lehman Baird of Swirlds, the Hashgraph company. Welcome back to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba, your host. Okay, we've got Mance Harmon. He is the CEO of Swirlds, the Hashgraph company, SWIRLDS.com, changing the world. All right, Mance, you remember where we left off?
Yes, micropayments.
Exactly.
Right. Well, so micropayments are important for multiple reasons. They make it possible to create new business models. For example, Wikipedia, every January, I'm sure you get the same notice that I get when browsing Wiki. They're asking for $3 or $6 as a donation to keep the doors open. By using micropayments, when I browse Wiki articles, I could seamlessly, frictionlessly make micropayments of a fraction of a cent for every article I read, and that provides Wikipedia an ongoing revenue stream. And these micropayments are going to be required for IoT, the Internet of Things, to really reach its full potential. So cryptocurrencies that are fast and inexpensive and secure will change the way that the Internet works. And that's what we enable.
You brought up the one thing, secure. How do you ensure that?
Well, in the world of distributed consensus, distributed ledger technology, this technology category has been around for decades. What's new are the latest breakthroughs in security. And what we've been able to achieve is sort of the gold standard, what would be considered the gold standard in distributed ledger technology. And we've been able to do it at scale. What that means practically is that there are attacks that we're not susceptible to, or we mitigate, that the other first generation and second generation technologies just can't address. And that just means that the system will remain up and online, in our case, when the others come under attack and can't remain online.
Give us a for instance on that.
Well, there's something called a distributed denial of service attack. This is often in the news where hundreds of or thousands or even hundreds of thousands of computers will flood a single server with packets of information and prevent that server from communicating with the rest of the world. Last year, this happened with Netflix and a bunch of the other major tech giants. Using this technology, we can mitigate the possibility of those DDoS attacks in ways that hasn't been previously possible, and therefore our system will stay online when the others won't, which makes, is a great value proposition for anybody wanting to build a YouTube or a Netflix on top of our distributed ledger technology.
Yes, you're talking to the right guy on that, because that's where we're going, is doing just that type of thing. But that's a conversation for another time. What about your future plans? We've got about a couple of minutes left.
Well, so we just announced about a month ago in New York City, Hedera Hashgraph. Hedera Hashgraph is focused on building a public ledger, meaning it's competing with Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's the one that will have the associated cryptocurrency. It's both a technology platform and a council of 39 global blue chip organizations. These are not a bunch of banks. These are a few banks, but tech giants and insurance companies and telcos and global law firms and global consultancies, geo-distributed and cross-industry, a governing council based on the way Visa started back in the 1960s to provide the governance and management of this global ledger and associated cryptocurrency. That's what we're focused on this year, and we believe that's what will enable micropayments in the ways that I previously described.
That is amazing stuff, because that is a whole new ecosystem. Do you see that they're going to get much pushback from some of the sovereign governments out there because what they're doing right now with the cryptocurrencies?
Well, in fact, what we're doing is making it possible for those sovereign governments to regulate their jurisdictions. This is also new in the industry.
Yeah.
The industry was designed to not enable that or prohibit that. We're actually making it possible to both be anonymous and for governments to regulate their jurisdictions as appropriate. KYC and AML concerns.
KYC and AML. Tell the listening audience who doesn't know what that is, what it is.
Yeah, banks have to prove that they know their customer, that they have information about the identity of their customers, and they use that to prevent money laundering, anti-money laundering. That's the AML piece of this. This has been one of the big problems that governments have had with this emerging category of cryptocurrencies. The Bitcoin was designed to make it impossible for governments to regulate, to do this sort of these checks and balances on the exchange of money. What we're doing is making it possible for the governments to decide how they're going to regulate their specific jurisdictions. So the U.S. will be able to regulate as appropriate in the U.S., but they will not be able to, of course, to say anything about any other country. Each country will regulate appropriately for their jurisdiction, but at the same time, we maintain anonymity. It's an opt-in solution. For those that want to remain truly anonymous, they'll be able to do so. They just won't be able to spend that currency with companies that are under the regulations of the given jurisdiction. So we're trying to find that happy balance that's absolutely required to take this whole category mainstream.
Got it. I'm sure you will. Mance, you're welcome back anytime. I'm going to thank you for being a guest on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Mance Harmon, co-founder, CEO, Swirlds. His partner is Lehman Baird. That is SWIRLDS.com. It is the hash graph company. This is brand new stuff. I'm so happy to have him on the show.